Okay, here is your system of equations study guide. For the first set of questions, you're going to determine the number of solutions for each system. So as I take a look, our first equation, you can see that the slopes, they almost look like they're the same, but they're not. It's positive 5 and negative 5. So the slopes are different, and the y-intercepts are different. When both the slope and the intercepts are different, these equations would eventually cross. So this is an example of one solution. Looking at number 2, these also look very different. But if I look closer, I'm thinking that these could be twins. These could be infinite solutions, the exact same equation. What I'm thinking is I could double everything in the first equation, and if I double it, if I multiply everything by 2 times 2, then this would become 6x, and this would become 2y, and this would become 8. So they would be twins, so infinite solutions. Also, if I did the opposite, and I took this equation and I divided all 3 terms by 2, then 6 divided by 2 would become 3x, and 2 divided by 2 would become 1y, which is just y, and 8 divided by 2 would become 4. So it would become the same equation. So these are in fact twins, so they are infinite solutions, because they are the same equation, kind of in disguise. Okay, and then the last one, I look at the slopes and I see, oh, slopes are the same. Then I look at the intercepts, and the intercepts are different. So if I graph these, we will get a set of parallel lines, so that would be no solution. The same slope, but different intercepts. Moving on to part 2, we're going to graph our equations. So remember, we always begin at the b. So for the first equation, I'm going to begin at -2 and put a point. And then I go ahead and rise and run. I go ahead and look at the slope. Now, if there is not a number in front of the x, that's an invisible 1. So this is going to be a rise 1, run 1. Okay, so remember, try to fill up your graph. At least 5 points. I would like to span the whole graph if I can. Okay, so there's our first line. Our second equation, we would begin at +4. And now look at our slope. Our slope is -2, but remember we need rise over run, so those numbers we can put over 1. Our slope is negative, so our line should go down. I'm going to go down 2, forward 1, down 2, forward 1, down 2, forward 1, and I can see that they intersect. So I have one solution. So I have one solution, and the solution is that point where they cross right here, which is 2, 0. Okay, the next set. Begin at the B. I'm noticing right away that our slopes are the same. Did you notice that? That means we're going to get parallel lines. Okay, but let's go ahead and graph them. Begin at 1. And then my slope is 2, but I need rise over run, so it's 2 over 1. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. Going to fill the graph up. Okay, so there's our first line. Okay, and now for our second equation, we're going to begin at the y-intercept, which is -2, and it's the same slope, rise 2, run 1. And yep, you can see we have parallel lines, which will never cross, so there is no solution. Okay, moving on to number 6. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to begin at the B, put a point. point at -4. And now my slope is 3. Remember, I need rise over run, so 3 over 1. Rise 3, run 1. Okay, our second equation, the intercept is +3, so you put a point at 3. And our slope is negative. That means our line's going to decrease or go down. I'm going to go down 1, forward 2. Down 1, forward 2. And there we go. These intersect because they have different slopes and different intercepts. And the solution is that point where they cross, which is 2, 2. You could also, if you wanted, you could write one solution right here. Okay, let's move on to the word problems. And remember, we're going to use y equals mx plus b. That helps us write our equations. So Kyle is renting a 15-foot moving truck to move to his new house. The first truck rental company charges a fee of $30 plus 75 cents per mile. Keyword being per. Okay, so that's the first company. So let's write this into y equals mx plus b form. So the fee that they charge, the $30 plus 75 cents per mile, we have to decide which one is the rate or the slope and which one is the initial value. The per kind of tips me off as the rate. It's per mile, so that gets the x. And then the 30 is the initial value that they'll charge you. The second truck company charges a fee of $29 plus 80 cents per mile. Okay, so we do that the same way. 80 cents gets the x, that's our slope or our rate, and the initial value is 29. Okay, moving on to number 8. We're going to graph the following equations. A zoo had 2 cubs that were born on December 31st, one weighing 3 pounds and another weighing 2 pounds. The first cub is gaining 6 pounds per week, and the other is 7 pounds per week. Okay, so here are the equations. They already give it to us, so we can see the scenarios there. And we want to know when they would weigh the same amount. Okay, so we need the weeks. Figure out when they would weigh the same amount. So the weeks and the pounds would be our labels. And I might be able to just fit ones here. I'm going to try to just count by ones on my graph. So go ahead and label your graph. And then, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see if this works. All right, so the first one, we're going to begin at 6, or begin at 3, begin at the intercept and put a point. And then it's 6 pounds every week. So I'm going to rise 6 and run 1. And then do that again, rise 6 and run 1. Okay, I have enough. That's probably all I'm going to fit to make a line there. And for the second equation, we're going to begin at 2 and put a point. And we're going to rise 7 and run 1. And then it intersects right there. 1, 2. Okay. I'm going to connect those. Okay, and I can see that they intersected right away after the first week. Okay, so at which week did the cubs weigh the same? So at week 1, that was fast. The cubs both weigh 9 pounds. Okay, our next set, we're going to complete tables of values and to see if there's a solution or a common point that they share. Okay, to do these types of problems, we take our x values, which are located right here. All of these values we're going to substitute into the equation. It does say down here to show your work, so you want to make sure that all the work is shown. I'm going to do my work right off to the side here. Okay, so anywhere I see an x, I'm going to insert the x value into the equation. And then I'm going to solve it. Okay, so for the first one, -3 times -2, that's a positive 6. A negative times a negative is a positive. And then it's 6 minus 3, and 6 minus 3 is 3 for our y value. Okay, moving on to our next equation, or our next x value is -1. So now I'm going to substitute out the x and input the -1. Okay, now solve it. -3 times -1, that's a positive 3. And 3 minus 3 is 0. Okay, now I'm going to sub in a 0 where I saw x. So -3 times 0 minus 3. Well, -3 times 0 is 0, and 0 minus 3 is -3. Okay, now we're going to substitute in the 1. -3 times 1 minus 3. So -3 times 1 is -3. And -3 minus 3, that's -6. And then the last digit to sub in, or x value to sub in, is 2. So -3 times 2 minus 3. -3 times 2 is -6. And -6 minus 3 is -9. All right, moving on to our second equation. Okay, now our x value is over here on the other side of the equal sign. So this one's a little bit trickier. Okay, same process. We're going to sub in our x values. So -3, or -4 times -2 equals y minus 4. 4 times -2 is -8. Okay. And now I need to figure out what the y is. So I need to get y by itself. So I can add 4 to both sides. That gets y by itself. And we get -4 for our first y value. Okay, now we're going to sub in -1. So 4 times -1 equals y minus 4. 4 times -1 is -4. And now I need to get y by itself. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And that gets me 0, because -4 plus 4 is 0. Okay, now we're going to sub in 0. 4 times 0. 4 times 0 is 0. And now to get y by itself, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So the y equals 4. I'm going to run out of some workspace here. I'll go over here. Okay, so now I'm going to sub in 1. So 4 times 1. 4 times 1 is 4. Okay, now to get y by itself, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And y equals 8. Okay, you might start to see a pattern, which I'm starting to notice a pattern. But I'm going to finish off by showing the work. 4 times 2 is 8. To get y by itself, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So y equals 12 when I subbed that in. Okay, so now I'm going to see, is there a solution? Meaning, do they have any point that's identical, exactly the same? And I see it right here. Right there is the solution. So our solution is -1 and 0, because that's the common point. If we graph these, that's where they would intersect. Okay, that was quite a bit of work using that substitution. Make sure you show all of your work. And then to wrap it up, you're going to just look at the graphs and write the solution. So we can see parallel lines. That means no solution. Okay, where the lines intersect, that's one solution. And I'm going to actually write that solution as well. It's -4, 4. And this one has one solution as well, because they intersect and it crosses at 2, -3. Okay, so that completes your study guide. Make sure yours is done with all the work shown. You should also review all of these checkpoints and make sure that it makes sense to you that you can do all of these things.